Hey, Prime members! Have you heard? You can listen to your favorite podcasts ad-free? Good news! With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free-podcasts. That's amazon.com/ad-free-podcasts to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Forget one-size-fits-all diets. With Noom, you get a personalized weight loss plan that's tailored to your lifestyle. Have cravings? Food FOMO? Noom can help you lose weight while still enjoying your favorite foods. Noom's users love the flexible approach, blending psychology and biology to help you lose weight in a way that's sustainable for you. Plus, you can rest assured Noom's approach is grounded in science. They've published more than 30 peer-reviewed scientific articles describing their methods and effectiveness. Stay focused on what's important to you with Noom's psychology and biology-based approach. Sign up for your trial today at Noom.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Weekly Walkthrough with Alex and Graham. I'm Alex. Of course, the other man on the screen is Graham. You guys know him and love him, hopefully, by this point. Another segment of the Max Sports Connection, part of the Varsity Podcast Network. Thank you so much for joining us this week. It's the final week of college football, the final week of Maction, that last week of November, where we get to find out who's going to the MAC championship. The game that we're going to talk about today, of course, Western versus Eastern. And I'm not talking about Kentucky. I'm talking about Western Michigan versus Eastern Michigan. And there's a lot on the line for these two teams. Graham, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining me this week.
Yeah, happy to be here. And you're right. I mean, there's a ton on the line for these teams. We got Eastern Michigan sitting at 5-6 overall, 2-5 in the conference. Western also at 5-6, 4-3 in the conference. If you're good at math, you can tell both of these teams need one more win to get to that sixth win necessary to be bowl eligible. So we got some bowl eligibility on the line. For one of these teams, this will be officially the last week of the season.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And just kind of want to give you guys a little bit of history coming into this game. Everybody knows Western Central, one of the greatest rivalries in the Mid-American Conference. Some might argue it's the best. I don't, but some might. And they recently, as recent as 2005, I believe, the Michigan MAC Trophy was created to kind of create like a three-way rivalry between Western Michigan, Central Michigan, and of course, Eastern Michigan. But Western and Eastern have been playing all the way since back to 1912. Western Michigan, of course, owns the overall record, 32-21-2. But these schools have been playing since the Titanic sank, which kind of a little bit dark when you think about that.
Yeah, correlation or causation there, Alex?
A little bit of both, maybe. Who knows? I mean, Eastern Michigan did win that year, so we can blame Eastern Michigan, I guess. Yeah. But Eastern Michigan won that first one. They actually won 3 of the first 4 before there was a tie in 1929. There's a huge gap of time where they didn't play. But for the most part, this has been all Western. This has been a kind of a one-sided, quote-unquote, rivalry. But it's been a lot more interesting since they've created this directional, the Michigan MAC Trophy. Eastern Michigan's won the Michigan MAC Trophy 5 times, most recently 2022. Western has won it 8 times, and they won it actually last season. If Western wins this weekend, they retain the Michigan MAC Trophy. It always goes, if there's a 3-way tie, it goes back to the previous holder, similar to the Cleveland Guardians and Cincinnati Reds trophy, which is why Cincinnati has not seen it in a couple of years, because there have been a lot of ties in terms of season record. But we're not talking about baseball. We're talking about football. Graham, let's any other information we need to know before we dive into this one?
Well, love that Michigan MAC Trophy. You know, it's one of the few trophies out there that is contested between 3 teams. One of these 3-team rivalry trophies. You know, the other big one we think about is the trophy between the military schools, the
armed forces, or the Commander-in-Chief Trophy. Yeah,
the Commander-in-Chief Trophy. Thank you. I was missing the name for that trophy there, but you know, we talk about these kind of 3-way trophies, and it's interesting that it's so easy for these teams to end up at 1-1 and have that 3-way tie. Western has this history of holding on to this trophy for 3 years, 4 years in a row, and most of it is due to this retaining it due to these ties. So Western could set up another tie where they hold on to the trophy. Of course, Eastern beat Central earlier this year, so their win would also take that trophy home. It's interesting that there's not really a trophy for this Western Eastern rivalry just in and itself.
Mm-hmm.
But excited to see this game. It's so much on the line for both of these teams. I was reading through Eastern's media packet this week, and I don't know if you saw that, but they have a fun fact in there. Did you know an Eastern faculty member back in 1914? You're talking about the Titanic. This is just shortly after that. The Eastern faculty member invents the referee shirt, the striped referee shirt. So that's Lloyd Olds. Was a faculty member, an athletic director at Eastern Michigan back in the day, and he was also a referee for high school basketball. And he said he kept getting hit in the chest because players thought that he was a player. Although I doubt it. I mean, you ever seen a referee at a high school basketball game? He looks nothing like the player. But he keeps getting hit with the ball, so he hires someone to knit him a shirt, and they knit him this striped shirt. And he said he got plenty of good-natured ribbing, although maybe not so good-natured. But it caught on. That's that striped shirt didn't look like the shirt of either team, and EMU in the Ref Hall of Fame.
Is that mostly because the shirt had sleeves? I mean, I feel like basketball players, they don't have sleeves on their uniforms, so I feel like that he stood out just because of the sleeves.
No, I think it's the stripes, Alex. I'm not looking at players' arms in order to determine what team they're on. You'll notice that in basketball, lots of arms, not all of them belonging to your guys. In fact, about half of them not belonging to your team.
A little less than half if you count the referees.
I don't. I exclusively yell at the referees. If I treat them as humans, then that gets problematic. So I have to imagine that they're not, for the sake of the yelling. Western Michigan, Alex. Western Michigan went on a big run to start the season. They were undefeated in MAC play, and everybody was looking at them. Maybe these are the runaway MAC champions. We saw them coming in. We thought maybe these Broncos are going to just kind of run away with the conference, end up in that championship game. That's when we started talking about those MS scenarios that you've been posting on Twitter over there. We had to talk about the Broncos as getting in there. Lately, though, they've had a run of bad luck. They're officially eliminated from conference championship contention, and here we sit with a 5-6 record overall, under 500, 4-3 in the conference. They have a chance to finish this out strong, and they're favored. The line opened at 6.5 in favor of the Broncos. Right now, it's sitting at 7 points even for the Broncos here, and I really think Western has a good chance to win this one. We talk about the home team kind of having an advantage. This game is in Kalamazoo on Saturday. So I think Waldo Stadium will be rocking, although there's always a chance that maybe not because of Thanksgiving break. But this one should be a cold game, should be a fun game, and there's everything on the line for both teams.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think as you very appropriately mentioned, so many things on the line. The Michigan MAC, of course, but more importantly, bowl eligibility. As we all know, Central Michigan coach Jim McElwain is stepping down at the end of the year. This would be a great way for him to watch Western Michigan and Central. He could sit on his couch at Thanksgiving, watch them or Western and Eastern battle it out. Sorry, too many directional Michigans. He could watch them battle it out, knowing that. Well, he's done for the year. He gets to relax and watch these two teams duke it out and see who gets to take home that trophy. But Western, they're reeling from that loss last week. That was a loss that kind of stunned a lot of people. Western was in that one the prohibitive favorite, and Central Michigan they went out and they won it Jim McElwain in his penultimate game as Central Michigan's coach. Of course, there's the swirl of controversy regarding the Connor Stallions investigation and whatnot. And I don't want to sit here and speculate on that. I don't want to talk about that too much, but it's very interesting, the tale of two halves Western Michigan has dealt with, especially in conference play. They looked excellent to start the year off against Wisconsin. They played okay against Ohio State. Better than some of their non-conference opponents have played against Ohio State this year. But then they came into conference play. Like you said, they very, very, very good football. They played right out of the gate. And I mean, they beat Buffalo, who knocked off Toledo and Northern Illinois. They took them down, and they just looked like, as you said, the favorite. Eastern Michigan, their season has been so up and down. I have a tweet bookmarked from a month ago from the Van Z. Shout out to my guy, Mr. EMU himself. He tweeted out a month ago, this time next week, Eastern Michigan could be bowl eligible and fighting for contention for the MAC championship. Well, Eastern's not won a game since, dropping the game to Akron and Toledo. And then, of course, last week, now they're fighting back for bowl eligibility. What do you make of this game just looking at it on paper, Graham?
Well, you're right. The promise was there for both of these teams, especially about midway through the season. We thought both of these teams definitely going to be bowl eligible. Now it turns out that's only half true. But the good news is that it is half true. At least one of these teams will be bowl eligible coming out of this game. When we look at the comparisons on paper, S&P Plus barely favors Western. It rates their offense slightly better than EMU's offense, their defense slightly worse, their special teams almost dead even, but overall favors Western. FBI also favoring Western, has them ranked 108th in the country compared to Eastern's 121st. But what's interesting is the numbers favor Eastern for the most part. Eastern's offense not scoring as many points per game, only 26.6 compared to Western's 29.7. But Eastern has more yards per game, 385.5 compared to Western's 376. Passing yards, Eastern almost 250 passing yards a game, Western only $191. And Eastern, in terms of rushing yards, slightly less, 136 compared to Western's 184. But what's interesting here is when we look at the defensive side of the ball, Eastern's defense has looked way better than Western's defense all year long. Western giving up 32.5 points per game, 415 yards allowed, 230 of that through the air, 185 on the ground, compared to an Eastern defense that's only allowing 28 points per game, 387 yards total, 230 yards through the air, and 157 on the ground. So just a different sort of defense. And it looks like Eastern, at least in terms of those numbers, might have the advantage in this one. But I'll tell you what, I think it's the Broncos at home. I really do. I think that they have a shot here. And I'm going to tell you why. It's a cold game. There's a chance there's going to be some weather. And the big news here is that Western is a team who can get it done on the ground. Leading the way for this Western Broncos team is running back Jaden Nixon, who has 79.8 yards per game. That's fourth in the conference. Jalen Buckley, also no slouch at 69.3 yards per game. That's ninth in the conference. Nixon leads the conference in rushing touchdowns with 12, and he's second in the MAC in total rushing yards with 878. So this Jaden Nixon has the ability to score, to put the ball in the end zone. And that rushing attack is going to be really important on Saturday.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right. The ground game is the key component to this weekend. Although I do want to point out Cole Snyder, who has put up 2,600 yards on the year, has looked pretty good. I mean, he's had a few more picks than he would like for Eastern, but he leads the conference. He's arguably the best quarterback in the conference purely off of passing yards. And he's shown he's the gunslinger in the MAC this year, sitting at number one, whereas Hayden Wolf, who has looked great throughout multiple games this year, he sits at seventh right now at almost 2,100 yards. I'm a big fan of what Cole Snyder's done. And you were just talking about these defensive numbers. And I'm pulling that back up right now on my little, my fancy little spreadsheet. That's not that fancy. Um, Eastern Michigan, yeah, they sit there at 229 passing yards a game, but Western Michigan's giving up 230 passing yards a game. Well, let me tell you, Cole Snyder's averaging 235 a game. So he's right on the money. And when Western sits at 9th in the conference in passing defense, that tells me that maybe for Western, this will be a ground game. But for Eastern, this is going to be an air raid. This is going to be an opportunity for them to come out. And they've got 3 of the top 11 receivers in the conference, paced by Orange Singleton, who has 639 yards on the season, 2 scores, but he's averaging almost 60 yards a game. Terry Lockett Jr. sits at number 8 in the Mid-American Conference. He's averaging, again, almost 60 yards a game, but he's got 651 yards on the season and 5 touchdowns. These two, this is a dynamic wide receiver duo who they don't need to get all the catches. In fact, Eastern Michigan's got a bunch of guys in the top 50 in the conference. And that's a sign that Cole Snyder can pass his ball around and get it to a lot of his players. You don't need to rely on one bell cow when you've got a lot of mouths to feed. Cole Snyder is a smart enough and talented enough quarterback. I mean, good Lord, he's a senior. He knows who his guys are. He knows who he can trust. Chris Creighton has done a great job coaching him up, building him up in this system after transferring in from Buffalo. This is a guy who understands what he needs to do. And I really believe that this is going to come down to ground game for Western versus passing game for Eastern.
Well, certainly those have been the strengths of each of these offensive schemes. You mentioned Chris Creighton, one of the longest tenured coaches in the MAC, losing out to Miami as Chuck Martin by just 3 days. Do you know that?
That's wild.
Got hired 3 days after Chuck Martin. So he misses out on the longest tenure in the MAC by just 3 days there. You're mentioning this passing game from Eastern, which has been impressive all year long. A few great receivers for Eastern, as well as an excellent quarterback. But I'm going to go back to the fact that this game has taken place at the end of November in Kalamazoo, Michigan. The projected weather at start time, we're looking at around 28 degrees, so cold game. There's about a 20% chance of snow throughout the game, with wind gusts right around 11 miles per hour. This is going to be a hard game to throw the ball in, Alex, and I think that's going to favor the ground attack of the Broncos. The Broncos who can keep the ball on the ground, but don't count them out through the air either. Hayden Wolf has done just a fine job passing when needed in this Western Michigan offense. He has 2,088 passing yards that you mentioned. But the important thing here is 16 touchdowns compared to only 7 interceptions. So he's certainly on the right side of that ratio. And he has plenty of weapons. We got Blake Bosma leads the team in receptions with 35. Seems like a guy who's always open. Kenneth Womack leading the team in receiving yards with 456. Only 1 touchdown for that. Where are the touchdowns going? Well, they're going all around the team, including Anthony Sambucci, who has 2 touchdowns. He's second on the team in terms of receiving yards with 376. So this is a team who spreads the ball out on offense in terms of scoring and then hands the ball off to Jaden Nixon, who punches it in the end zone as well. This is a scoring offense more than it is a one thing in particular in terms of putting the ball in the end zone. And that's why I think the Broncos have a chance here. Of course, this game is at home. It's at all the funny words in Kalamazoo at Waldo Stadium. And it's not going to be hard to find somebody who can put the ball in the end zone for these Broncos.
I think to your point, you mentioned the ground game, and you're right. Cold weather and rain. Those are, in my opinion, some of the great equalizers in college football, specifically rain, snow, things like that, because it forces you to rely on one dimension of your program. But you failed to mention Delbert Mims, which why would you? You're talking Western Michigan here. Delbert Mims paces Eastern Michigan, the senior running back. He's averaging 4.08 yards a game. He has 7 rushing touchdowns. And he's got about 62 yards per contest for Eastern Michigan. That's good for 8th in the Mid-American Conference. So Eastern Michigan has quality players on the ground as well, led by Delbert Mims. But then Cole Snyder himself, people don't talk about this enough. Cole Snyder himself is a rushing threat. He's one of those guys. He's not going to beat you with his speed, but he is going to take the attempts that he needs to take. He's averaging 27 rushing yards a game, which is more than a quarterback probably should. But that shows you just how dynamic this offense is and how they can stretch the field and make you pay either through the air or on the ground. He, of course, has 4 rushing touchdowns on the season, which in terms of rushing touchdowns, that's not bad. He's the number one quarterback on the list in the Mid-American Conference for rushing touchdowns this year. And I'm very impressed with Cole Snyder and what he's been able to do both through the air and on the ground. He's accounted for, looking at it all, he's accounted for 19 touchdowns on the season, 8 interceptions, not ideal if you're Cole Snyder. You're still on the right side of that number, but not ideal. But the fact that he can do it on the ground as well, I think gives Eastern Michigan a little bit of an edge, especially with Western's rush defense, who has not been good this year, and their pass defense, who's been okay. Now, Western, they've always been able to come out and just, all right, let's go. Until they started running into the Northern Illinois, until they started playing Central Michigan, who, again, weather, great equalizer. It just feels to me like this is a classic game that's going to be set up by really who wants it more. With so many things on the line, again, you bowl eligibility, the Michigan MAC. This is going to come down to who wants it more. And I'm really excited to see how this one plays out.
Yeah, we talk about who wants it more. I haven't mentioned the some of the studs on this Western defense yet. We're talking about Tate Halleck, safety. He's second in the MAC in interceptions with 4, and that he's tied for 10th in the conference in passes defended with 8. But what I wanted to bring up there is that this Western Michigan team wins the turnover battle. They have their total margin in turnovers is +5, which is, I don't know if you know anything about turnover margins, but that's pretty good. Anything in the pluses is good. Eastern Michigan +1, but Western sitting here at +5 turnovers for the year. A lot of it to do with Tate Halleck and his ball hawk ability. But this is a team who they'll pick the ball off through the air. They'll pick the ball up off the ground. They're forcing fumbles. They're recovering those fumbles. And in a game with weather like we're talking about, the ball's going to be available. So it's these turnovers that is going to give Western a chance. You talk about who wants it more. It's going to come down to which team is safer with the ball in their hands and which team can take the ball from the other team. Not to be led astray by the turnovers. Western also has a linebacker on defense, Donald Willis, who leads the defense in total tackles with 85, and as well as Corey Walker up front on the D line, who has 5.5 sacks on the year. This is a defense who overall has not looked great in terms of the conference in general, but they do have these studs at each level. And that's going to allow them to one, win that turnover battle, sure. But 2, also stand firm when they need to, even when the game might start to get out of hand with the weather and with so much on the line.
James Jonkum, and I'm sure I probably am butchering that. So he's, I feel like it's like Django, but the D is silent, but I could be very wrong. He's one of the top 10 linebackers in the Mid-American Conference this year. He has 81 total tackles. He's averaging 9 tackles a contest. He's played in 9 games. He is going to be a force for Eastern Michigan. He's the junior linebacker for the Eagles. He is going to be a force on this defensive side, but also right next to him, Luke Murphy, another junior linebacker. He has 79 tackles on the season. He's averaging 7.5 a game. When you talk about defense, Eastern Michigan has not been great on the turnover margin. They actually sit 9th in the conference with just +1. But when I look at scoring defense, this is where it comes into play. When I look at scoring defense, Eastern Michigan has given up 40 touchdowns this year, but they've held opponents to 9 field goals. In fact, in third down conversions, I think this is an important stat. This is going to be where Eastern has an opportunity to take advantage of this thing. They sit at 4th in the conference, 71% conversion rate by opponents on 3rd down, and then red zone conversions. Western Michigan does a great job of moving the ball into the red zone, and they've done a great job all year. Yes, they sit at 6th in defensive, or they sit at 6th in red zone conversions. Eastern Michigan sits at 8th. If you can force Western to field goals, that's going to be the difference. I do like Western in the red zone a little bit more than I like Eastern, but I think the 3rd down conversions are going to be a big one. If Eastern Michigan can force them to 3rd and long and, missing on a few of those conversions, that's going to be the key point. But it starts with James and Luke anchoring this defensive side.
Well, this game is on Saturday. It's November 30th at 1:30 in Kalamazoo. Its game is going to be covered on ESPN Plus. Game starts slightly later than that other big game you might be watching on Saturday. So maybe you tune in at the end of it after that game has ended. But us MAC fans, we're going to be watching this one. Definitely not on any other games on Saturday. But
Nope,
this is a big
all.
one. Alex, I think I'm ready to make my pick. Are you ready to make your pick? You got more things you want to talk about these Eagles?
Give me your pick. We've got to get these Eagles and Broncos ready for Thanksgiving. So give me your pick.
There we go. Well, I think you know where I'm going with this one, but I'm going to channel my inner Lee Corso and say, let's go Broncos. The hat doesn't fit with the headphones. I got to go headphones and then hat. But anyway, there's a hat there. Let's go Broncos. I'll put the old chin strap on.
It's really funny you did that, because prior to this segment, I was looking for my Eastern Michigan hard hat that I was ready to put on, Lee Corso style, and say go Eagles. So pretend it's there. Big block E on the gray helmet there. But of course, I'm going Eagles on this one. It should be a great battle. So much on the line. Michigan MAC and bowl eligibility. I'm really, really looking forward to this one. But before we get on to our next segment, though, Graham, I got to ask you, have you checked out the Varsity Network app by Lairfield? I know you know this, and I know our listeners all know this. The app is free to download, the Apple App Store, the Google Play Store. But you can listen, and a lot of people haven't figured this out yet. I still get people asking, Alex, tell me more about this app. You can listen live to all of your favorite calls from all of your favorite schools. If you're a Western Michigan fan listening to this right now, you could download this app and you can listen to your broadcast team call this game. If you can't be in front of a TV on Saturday, which, maybe your friends and family want to watch that other game going on down here in Ohio, you can listen to the calls live through the Varsity Network app. Not just the MAC and not just football, but you can listen to basketball. You can listen to baseball. You can listen to all sorts of sports across every school, across every conference in Division I college athletics. So you're a Big Ten fan, maybe you're watching the Western Michigan game, but you want to keep an eye on those Ohio State Michigan scores. You can listen to the broadcast team through this app. You can sign in, you can save your favorite schools, sports, and much more. You can also find hundreds of great podcasts, such as the MAC Sports Connection. Hopefully you guys think it's great. But you can also find the Group of Five guys. You can find the Sickos Committee, and many more podcasts are all available for free to listen to through this app. So make sure you guys download that app today. Listen, save, sign in, create your accounts. It's very well worth it. Graham, I know we've talked about it before. I simply love this app, and I think you guys will too.
Yeah, there's something great about audio broadcasts when it comes to sports. There's something, it feels a little bit closer to home, feels a little bit like you're almost at the game that way. I feel like when we watch on TV, we get a lot of those stats and those pop-ups and those commercials and everything else that kind of takes you out of it. And I think just listening to a voice kind of keeps you locked into the game. And the Varsity app is great for that.
Yeah, I agree. And it's, like I said, it's free. So make sure you guys are downloading that. Now, Graham, we've got our our ultimate final games of 2024 for the regular season for MACtion. And there's plenty on the line for 4 of these teams. So we'll start with the teams that aren't in title contention. We'll start here with Toledo versus Akron on Tuesday, November 26th. ESPN2, 7 o'clock. They're at InfoCision Stadium, Toledo by -8, or Toledo by 8, rather. Quick thoughts on this one?
Oh, well, this game taking place in my backyard, really
Literally
nothing
in your
on the
backyard.
line. Really nothing on the line for either of these teams. Toledo is already bowl eligible. They're already eliminated from MAC championship contention. Akron, the opposite, not bowl eligible. No chance to become bowl eligible in this game. This game is home for Akron at InfoCision Stadium. I got the Zips in this one. I know Toledo's favored. Toledo is the better team here, but I think Akron has a little bit more to play for. And that's going to be the difference for these Zips.
Moving on to Saturday, like I said, we'll round back to the 4 eligible teams for the MAC championship. Central Michigan at Northern Illinois. Central Michigan, of course, Jim McElwain is retired. He will be done at the end of the season. Thomas Hammock, they're looking at trying to go back to another bowl, get another bowl win. Northern Illinois is bowl eligible. Huskies at home at Husky Stadium in DeKalb. Northern Illinois by 12.5. Any thoughts on this one, Graham?
I don't think there's much to say here. Northern Illinois came out this year. They beat Notre Dame. They had the looks of a very promising season. They stumbled a little bit in the middle of the year. At the end of the year, they've looked kind of okay. And I think that's more appropriate given this team, whether or not they're good or bad. I think they're more okay here. CMU had a heck of a win last week, but I think that magic is done. This is NIU all the way.
All right. And then, like I said, we have 4 teams alive for the MAC championship. I won't detail all the scenarios here. You guys can check that over on Twitter at the MSC podcast, or on Instagram. I've got the graphic up there as well. But 4 teams are alive: Miami, Ohio, Bowling Green, Ohio, and Buffalo. For Miami, Bowling Green, and Ohio, it's simple. Win and you're in. You win this week, you've punched your ticket to the MAC championship. For Buffalo, a little bit more complicated. They need some help. They need an Ohio loss. Most importantly, so Bulls fans are big Cardinals fans this weekend. So we'll talk about that game. We've got Ball State at Ohio down at Peden Stadium in Athens, 1:00 kick on Friday. Ohio by 14.5. This has the makings of a trap game, but I don't feel it. The Bobcats are perfect at home this year.
Yeah, this Ohio team has really impressed me this year, especially in the Toledo game. I think these Bobcats, it's a good team. It's a team who has handled adversity throughout the season. They've come out on top. I think they're ready to play. This is going to be another sort of rough end of the year MACtion game, but I think the Bobcats are completely ready for it. I'm going Ohio here.
All right, moving on down the list, we've got Kent State at Buffalo. That's back to Tuesday. That's a 7:00 kick on ESPN Plus over at UB Stadium. Buffalo by 21.5. Buffalo needs this win. They have no scenario where they can make the MAC championship with a loss. Any thoughts here? We've seen Kent State got blown out by 21 to Akron last week. I think we know where this one's going.
Well, it's so funny. Normally, I would say that any team in college football has the chance to win a game a season. You would expect them to get one lucky win, and Kent State hasn't gotten it yet. So maybe this is your time. But another Lee Corso, not so fast. This is the Buffalo Bulls all the way. Buffalo needs this win to remain in MAC championship contention, and Kent State has just not looked competitive this year. So I'm going with the home team again.
All right, little cloud of controversy around Kent State throughout this season. They're on a historic 20-game losing streak. But moving on to arguably the most important match of the weekend, especially if you're a Miami or Bowling Green fan, it's Oxford versus Bowling Green, Miami versus Bowling Green, the Falcons versus the Redhawks, battle of the birds here. A lot of birds in the Mid-American Conference. And it's at noon on ESPNU on Friday up there at the Doit Perry Stadium in Bowling Green, Ohio. Line is Bowling Green by 2.5. So it's almost that full 3 points you give to the home team. This one's going to be fun.
Yeah. I mean, this is about the closest game I can think of in the MAC this year. Coming into the game, I really don't know which of these teams has an advantage. Because this game is at home, because I really like BG's offense, I think this has a Falcons win. but you would not be wrong to pick either of these teams. I'm going BG just because I noticed as I was picking these teams, I've picked all home teams so far, including the Broncos. So I'm going home teams again. Home teams are winning this week and this weekend. So let's go Falcons. That's the only time you'll ever hear me say that.
Wow.
That's
I've gotta save that clip there.
But BG wins this one.
All right. That one's gonna be a really good one. Before we wrap it up, Graham, do you have anything else you wanted to give to the listeners before we sign off?
Nothing at all. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving and watch some football.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week when we know the participants of the MAC championship game. Like I said, you can check out all the MS scenarios over on Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll see you guys back here next week.